Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 23rd public lecture hosted by NUS Cities. For those who don't know about NUS Cities, we are a university-wide, multidisciplinary, open and inclusive collaborative platform hosted within the College of Design and Engineering. The NUS Cities Public Lecture Series will investigate policies, ideas, and projects developed by urban experts, which aspire to create a sustainable, resilient, and livable cities. Through the lecture series, we hope to create a platform for discussion, retrospection, and conversation to give momentum to the ongoing research and exploration regarding issues concerning cities. I also want to share that we'll have a special segment at the end of this session. We will have an awarding session for the students, the winners for the Livable Cities course Best Project competition. So we will end the Q&A session earlier, as we will set aside 15 minutes for the awarding session. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce the speaker of the evening, Dr. Lola Woetzel. Dr. Lola Woetzel is the founder of the Global Sticks and senior partner emerita at McKinsey Company. She previously served as the director of the McKinsey Global Institute. Dr. Woetzel is an expert in urban development, economic master planning, and sustainability, and has spent more than 40 years advising national and city governments across Asia, the Middle East, Africa, Europe, and the Americas on productivity, investment, and environmental and social outcomes. Dr. Woetzel is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and a recipient of the Silver Magnolia Award from the Shanghai City government, as well as one of Consulting Magazine's top 50 influential consultants. Please join me in welcoming her on stage.
Okay, thank you. That was great. Very kind. It's really always a pleasure to come to Singapore as a well-managed city, and it's really a pleasure to be with you all. And NUS Cities is a wonderful program. As I was saying to colleagues earlier, it's hard to believe that this has only been going for a year or two. The amount of impact that the program has. And its reputation is something that you would expect to have at least decades of this, but of course you have Singapore to draw on, so that also helps. So I'm Lola. I'm as I like to say, a recovering consultant. I was with McKinsey & Company for 40 years, which is a management consulting group based out of, and I've been in China for 40 years. So I'm Chinese. This is what we look like. I have my green card. So yes, actually I am a permanent resident. But of course I was raised in the US. And so I have a view from both sides of that. And McKinsey is an American firm. So we worked with both Western and Chinese and local companies. For my time at the firm was all about working with the public sector and specifically with local governments. So over 100 engagements with Chinese governments at the local level, good relationships at the national level, not much business, and then we took the show on the road. So that growth model found very applicable, found a ready audience in Saudi Arabia and in all through the Middle East. Parts of Africa, Russia, India, and even a little bit in the Americas. So have all of that to draw on, which is in some ways part one of the story. And today I really want to talk to you a bit about part two, which is where I see this going and the amazing impacts that technology is bringing us. And I'm happy that today I get to contribute a bit to the multidisciplinary nature of your university and bring together faculties from computer science and design and engineering and architecture, because that's where we're going. This interdisciplinary nature, it's going to be very hard to maintain the boundaries of the silos that we've constructed. So this may prove challenging, but let's see how we go. So does anybody recognize this picture? Do you know what you're looking at? What's going on here? I'll give you a hint. These are tsukomogami. See, that really helped. No, it's a sort of, that's a bit of an academic joke, but naming something does not describe it. So what is going on here is like you see these creatures, and obviously they're doing something to other creatures, and they're wielding these objects, an umbrella, a hammer, apparently a blanket has come to life over here. I'm sure some of you have seen Disney and the idea of like with Beauty and the Beast, the dancing teacups, or so these are the spirits of objects. So in traditional Japanese folklore, if an object has been in use for 100 years, at the end of 100 years, it comes to life. And then its personality reflects the use to which it was put. So do these objects look happy? No. So they have been used and abused for 100 years. Imagine, your sofa at home. After 100 years of the cat scratching it, how would it feel? The short answer, of course, is not very good. And so, yeah, they're taking it out on their owners. And in traditional Japanese folklore, these are, generally speaking, a little tricky spirits, mischievous spirits. They play tricks on you, and they're conveying their feelings about your treatment of their environment. But that doesn't have to be that way. There are some that are nice because you took care of them, but mostly not. So I think we're coming there. We're getting there. We are going to be visited on us the consequences of our actions towards the built environment. The built environment is coming back at us. The built environment has points of view on us. And you don't have to sort of think about Bladerunner and sort of the future of androids and all the rest of it to realize that, these days, your sofa will talk to you. Your park bench will say, maybe you've been sitting here too long, or you should stand up and let that older person sit in this park bench. Maybe your trash can will say, you shouldn't put that in here. You should put it over there. So the intelligence that I see sort of imbuing the entire city is going to start creating a much more immersive experience for all of us. And that's the topic, essentially, saying that the role of technology is becoming so fundamentally intertwined with our sensory capacities, and that it's going to be indistinguishable. So we will not be able to tell the difference between what is something that is being influenced by our environment and what is something that we have decided to do. And that is going to be a real-time event. So let's start with sort of step us back. This is from research that we did, I don't know, it's probably 15 years ago. And essentially, it was like the disruptive dozen. We went out and we asked ourselves, what is the technologies that are going to change our world? And when we say that, we had a very specific definition of change our world. It was a product of three factors. One is the impact of the technology on the individual. How big an impact would it be? You measure it in terms of like, would it make you richer, poorer, older, younger? What would it do? How big an impact? Number two, how many people would it affect? Was it something that's confined only to rich people because it's so expensive and you can never get cheaper, or was it something that could go global and quickly and it could scale? And then thirdly, would it scale? Would we be able to see in our lifetimes within the next 15 years that kind of scaling effect? So it's per capita impact, which capitas, how fast? And this is the answer. So basically, we fell into four buckets of categories here. First of all, digital. And so that's the biggest one. This is, again, 10, 15 years ago. Mobile internets, cloud, all sorts of IoT. And, of course, AI. But it's not only. So we also have, of course, machines. And without the machines, we won't see the effects of the internet, or at least they won't see as much of them. But we're getting that. We're getting it autonomous. We're getting in robotics. And now we're sort of, I think on additive manufacturing, that's been a little bit less successful, I would argue, but robotics and autonomous for sure. We've had a special focus on energy simply because energy was such a huge part of the economy, and it has such a big impact when you shift the energy system. You really change the economy, you change the environment, you change your accessibility, of course, so all of that. And finally, we had things that were frankly not as possible at the time, but they were there. So the tail end, that's like number 9 and 10, were all the synthetic and bio revolution. But all that's happening, and there's more happening. And it's all happened in the last 10 years. So case in point, connectivity. So what, in my lifetime, gone 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, 6G, and it's all these Gs. What does all that mean anyway? Well, the first thing I would say, 1G was introduced for the purpose of voice calling. That's why we spent all that money on central office phone equipment. That's why Alcatel and Lucent exist. What do we use all of that for today? Data. It's very simple. Most innovations are like that. We invent them for one purpose, and then we use it for something completely different. The Roman road was built to carry the legions, and then it wound up creating the markets. That's a quote from Ericsson. So yeah, we've seen in our lifetime a tremendous transformation of the connectivity that we have. And 5 to 6G is going to be wild. So here we have 5G, 6G, throughput. So we're going from 2 gigabytes to 20 gigabytes to 100 gigabytes. Latency from 10 to 50 milliseconds, which is at that latency, my son could not be a world-class gamer because he had to use a VPN. When you get down to 0.01, yeah, it's real time. Everybody's on a level playing field. So, hopefully you'll start to see American Counter-Strike gamers on the Chinese national team. So who knows what the social effects will be. Energy efficiency, network coverage, 6G is, we're going vertical. So you will not be able to hide on the plane. The plane will be in touch. So 99% of the world will be covered. And yeah, fully integrated with AI and with non-terrestrial networks. So, that is wild. Every square or cubic centimeter of space on this planet will be connected to every other cubic centimeter of space on this planet. You will not be able to hide. Unless you want to, don't question. There are people who are going to be able to have a Faraday cage around their home. But yeah, if you don't do that, it's definitely there. And that's the connectivity side. Now, none of that connectivity is really useful unless you have an agent. The agent is the thing that the connectivity enables. And here's an example of an agent. So this is LiDAR. So LiDAR, this thing costs, I don't know, it's probably about, it used to be $100,000. I think it's down to probably about 20 at this stage. And it's a very complicated piece of multidisciplinary technology. We got your mirrors, which include your glass. We've got your motors, which are very, very highly tuned. We have your laser. We have a whole bunch of receivers. Putting that box together is a work of art and then a work of science. So it has been a huge revolution in our capacity to integrate these technologies so that we can do this. Has anybody met Matilda? So if you go to the streets of Los Angeles, I'm curious, I don't generally see this in Singapore. I'm just sort of wondering. I would have thought during COVID, you would have seen them. So this is Shake Shack, if you can read the label there. This is their remote delivery. So in China, we don't see as much of this because we have Kuaidi, and Kuaidi's cheap. Building Matilda costs you a bit of money. So you have the LiDAR thing, sort of scaled down version of it, a chip and a bunch of other things, but they're coming. And labor costs are high in Santa Monica. So yeah, they're all over the place. This is how food delivery works now in a high labor cost environment. And it keeps it warm inside the bucket there. And it's so that's an agent. It's a very specific agent. But now people are figuring out, well, if you can do that, well, you can use it for that. You maybe can also use it for pharmaceuticals delivery. And yes, of course, we do this in drones as well. In flying, China does that, the low altitude economy. So that's the second big change. Is now not only are we connected, but we have agents. The agents can do our bidding. They can run around. You can start to see where the Tsukumogami are coming in. This is a Tsukumogami. This is a box that has come to life. And so that's the second big thing. Third thing, I had to look this up just now. Does anybody know how much data there is in the world right now? Any guesses? Shout it out if you do. It's unlikely you would. 181 zettabytes. Yes, does anybody know what a zettabyte is? So a zettabyte is 1 trillion gigabytes. So this doesn't really convey the scale. So 90% of all the world's data has been created in the last 2 years. 90%. And it's growing, it's growing. And so I have clients before who said like, wow, we shouldn't let any data go to waste. Let's capture all the data. I say, are you kidding me? That is not practical. It doesn't make sense either. So increasingly, the problem has not been data. We have more data than we ever can possibly use, and we will get more and more and more, and it's all spilling out all around us because of all this connectivity. So what do we need? Well, we need this. We need an algorithm. We need something to search. We need something to sort of sort it out. It's just tell us what's going on. And yeah, we're getting them. So we all know about LLMs, or at least we know the words. But you know, here's another wild number. Algorithmic progress is estimated to be equivalent to computational power doubling every 5 to 14 months. Or another way of saying that is that the amount of compute that you need to achieve a given level of AI performance reduces by half roughly every 8 to 9 months. So every 8 to 9 months, we get twice as productive in our search. Well, that seems interesting. What is it? You know, how do I think about that? How good are these algorithms? Well, I think you probably know some of this story. So Google had image recognition competition where you basically would feed the algorithm a picture of an animal and you say, is it a leopard or is it a cheetah? Back in 2011. And so 26% of the time, the algorithm will get it wrong. And I say, ha ha, stupid algorithm. It's like, really can't tell because humans get it wrong 5% of the time. So humans better than algorithms. Aha! 5 years later, 3% of the time. So we are making incredible progress on all dimensions of the capacity, and that's image recognition. So that's a job that basically requires a camera and a brain. So you don't need to be able to climb, some tall mountains in order to accomplish the goal of being better than median human performance. But remember, we are also making progress on agents. So our agents are going to be able to climb tall buildings. So when will machines be competitive with humans? Any guesses? They're competitive now, pretty much. So you can break every human. So the way we think about this is that there's occupations, there's capability, there are activities, and there are capabilities. So you break it down. Every occupation has a bunch of activities. Teaching has, I don't know, research, talking, communicating with your students. There are a bunch of activities to do. Those activities in turn are composed of skills. The sensory perception, I can see what you're doing. Image processing, recognition of characters, logical reasoning. Median human performance versus technical capabilities. Today, machines, well, we're somewhere here. 2020 versus 20, we're somewhere in this neighborhood. Median orange dot, gross motor skills, information retrieval, navigation, optimization, machines can do it better than median human performance. And in fact, if you look at the green dots, they can be better than top quartile human performance. That's in the lab, fair enough. And it's technical potential, it's not adoption. Adoption is different. Adoption has more about, do we actually do that? But yeah, for the most part, on many of these dimensions, particularly the ones that require, some notion of intellectual capacity, it's already competitive. And you see what's at the bottom of the chart? Social and emotional output. How many of you have a ChatGPT boyfriend or girlfriend? Don't be shy. I know you don't want to raise your hands, but I know a lot of people who do. So yeah, for sure, we're making progress on this. And so, all of this is to say, well, all these things that we simply before assumed was human performance, that this is unique to our capability, is not in fact the case. So we have two ways of thinking about this. One is they're going to replace us, and the other is they're going to improve us. Because if you're sub-median, maybe you lost your arm. So your fine motor dexterity is somewhat impaired. Would you like to have an AI? Of course you would. It's like, so this is about helping. You can look at it as yes, a threat, but it is actually an opportunity. And there's nobody faster to recognize an opportunity than a company. So this is Cui Xiaopan. She was the employee of the year for Ping An, I believe it was. What is special? Oh, no, sorry, for Ping An, for Wang Ke. What is special about Cui Xiaopan? Sorry? Yes, she's not a person. She's an AI, she's an algorithm. But she was also the most effective debt collector for Wang Ke. She wins by no question. She did the best job to collect money and developed an in-house team using toolkits from Shell Ice, an AI system owned by Microsoft. Yay, so yes, those human capabilities are now being replicated in AI, and they are helping us to do better, in this case, to collect debt. This is a kitchen. This is a Haidilao kitchen. I know we all think of Haidilao as being this lovely company that sort of values its employees, and you can make a career at Haidilao and they will train you and you can, but if you get a little too expensive, we got this. This is an option. And so, yes, it's an unmanned kitchen. And if you think that's something dark factories or something, wait till you see dark stores, dark supermarkets, dark restaurants, dark everything. Because again, agents can do this work. You can do the cooking, and then shopping habits will change. It's like, why can't we do our wash at 3 in the morning? Well, usually because there's nowhere to go to buy washing powder. Now there will be. And it'll be available to you 24/7. So you'll probably expect to hear those washing machines running at later and later hours of the night. And our poor friends at HDP will have a new set of complaints to deal with. So that's what we see is this gradual merging of the human and the augmentation that comes with the use of this technology. And I'm going to try to play something that says where I think this might be going even further. Let's see if this, hopefully it's all hooked up to the sounds. There we go, here. I need to crank up the volume on this. Can we get that to play a little louder? And this is one where it does take visuals. This is why I didn't use this. Oh, there we go. It was there. Yeah. Yeah. And do we have sound louder sound? Okay.
It's not used, technology just fades away. We call this concept invisible computing. Mojo's invisible computing solution will be a platform that gives you everyday superpowers and an invisible edge throughout your day. But before it does any of that, it first has to be a great contact lens that improves your natural vision even when it's off. Mojo Lens built-in display will give you augmented reality wherever you look. It even works with your eyes closed, putting you into an instant VR world. The applications are nearly limitless, from being able to see in the dark or low light situations, to augmenting your memory with instant information, showing you real-time translations, or giving you a virtual teleprompter. One of our first medical applications is using AR overlays like edge detection and contrast enhancements to help people with vision impairments such as glaucoma and macular degeneration.
Okay, I think you get the general idea. Yeah. How many of you would buy that? How do I get this done? Okay, cool, thanks. How many, can I see a show of hands as to who would, okay, I got 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, I hate to disappoint you, but these guys couldn't make it through COVID, but they're working on it. Mojo Vision is a thing, you can look it up, and there are a bunch of others out there, and it's incredible, you know, the technology. Again, we're talking about really low power source, we're talking about incredible displays, that, you know, the resolution, and it's eye tracking, so, you know, it follows your eye. I mean, wow, is all I can say. I just think it's pretty incredible tech. And yes, certainly compared to what I'm able to do. So hang in there. Oh, there we go. Got it. Okay. All right, here we go. Oh, maybe, no, we don't. Let's get back to the, I'm trying to get back to the slideshow. One of these things is doing the wrong thing. Yeah, there we go. Ooh. Yeah, perfect. And in fact, you know, we're very comfortable with this kind of technology. I'm sure some of you have played Pokemon Go before. And so this is basically saying, instead of it being on your phone, it's in your eye. And so we will now start to experience this. Google Glass didn't really work because people could say that you were looking at them and you were thinking about them. And that didn't apparently fit with a lot of people's notions of surveillance. This you won't be able to know. So yeah, I mean, it's been, and so fooling the eye. If anybody's been in a very high tech or high quality video conference, it's like you can read the quality of the paper. You can read what the person is writing on the other side of the screen, and it's wild. So once your eye is fooled, all bets are off. So, and this was and as I said, the commercial world is ready to do this. Does anybody recognize this scene? We all know who is on the right-hand side there? Yeah, Deng Yifei. This is Teresa Teng. She was dead at the time, but she came back for a special live performance on CCTV year-end special in 2020 something. I forget the year. So 22. Yeah, isn't that wild? I mean, I just think so. That's, you know, why we're talking about this, is that we are now experiencing a merger of what we can imagine in our brain, which only we can see, with reality that allows us to sort of find out more things. So how does that all affect our cities? And this is a bit of a recap. You guys are experts, so I won't take much time on it. Every city is a combination of the physical and the digital. Every city has its physical infrastructure. Every city has its geography, it says layout, it says roads and bridges, whatever it has. The digital overlay, essentially, we think of it as hardware, software, and adoption. Hardware is everything that gathers information, microphones, cameras, sensors of any kind, air quality, blah, 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 all that. Software is what you do with that. It's the analytical decision-making process. And in others, if you're just gathering data for the purpose of gathering data, that is not a smart city. That has nothing to do with smartness. It just says you like gathering data. Like some people like go hunting for truffles. You know, the software enables that data to be translated into a decision. And there has to be a decision. If there's no decision, there's no smart. It's just simply you are, and decisions have, are responsive to needs. As in, we have a need, so we have to make a decision. If everything's fine, we don't care, we don't make a decision. So the data has to be put in service to something that somebody within the city actually cares about. And then which is the adoption. So here is a mapping of 60 smart city applications. Now this is about a decade old, again, so we really should update it. But it's still very valid. And most of these things either you have heard of or you've seen, but probably haven't used because some of them are invisible to you. We have many experts here from different utilities, so they know what this is about. It's like when you are doing something within the water system, the end user may or may not see that, but you know it's there because it's maintaining the network. And without it, big problem. So one way of thinking about it is like, okay, these verticals. So we have crime and safety, everything to do with death. Anything on this column can save your life, basically. Whether it's gunshot detection for the Americans in the room, or home security systems. So data-driven building inspections. That's a thing. It's like you really want the inspector to have all the data at their fingertips in advance, preferably, of them showing up. And of course, here in Singapore, you do. Crowd management, that will get your mayors fired if you do not have that early warning signal to sort of figure out how to manage the crush. And that happens a lot even in China. And Shanghai did recently, a couple years ago. So we have safety, we got health. Health is huge. What percentage of the time do you think people spend seeing a doctor when they go to a hospital? I'll make it easier in the US. Because in Singapore, I'm sure it's better. I'm sure it's a lot better. But I mean, in the US, what do you think? What percentage of the time the average person goes to a hospital? What percent of the time do they spend in the hospital, seeing a doctor? And I guess less than 5%. 95% of their time is waiting for something, waiting for the bill, waiting for the scheduling, waiting for the turn, waiting for their turn, whatever. 5% of the times with the doctor. So huge savings in the health area by better scheduling, transparency, and obviously avoiding the need for the trip in the first place because you took your meds on time because we told you to. So those things are all in the healthcare bucket. Then we have the resource bucket, energy, water, waste. Just put it all together. These are generally speaking networks. So management of the network is your #1 job. It's like, how do we make sure the network doesn't go down? When you flip the switch, the lights better come on. When you turn the faucet, the water better come out. And when I throw my trash, I better pay for it. So that, these are all network management tools typically. There are some consumer-facing interfaces, but mostly network management. Smart street lights would be something you will always see. So I see you do have energy efficient lighting here. Then we got mobility. Mobility, for my money, is the #1 application of all this. So what do we call a place where we put a lot of people together, we do not let them move around? What do we call that kind of a place? Jam a lot of people together, but you do not let them move. A prison, yes. So the difference between a prison and a city is mobility. So it's a very powerful use case. People want to move. I have a hypothesis that COVID, as we know, dramatically affected consumer confidence around the world. And everybody said, oh, the Chinese consumer is a lot less confident. Well, you should see the French consumer, or the American consumer. And it was radical. It was 20% drop in my belief about the future. And for China, that put them, moderately optimistic instead of crazy optimistic. For the French, they're negative. But why was that? Why was it universal across anywhere to discern with this drop in confidence? The only thing I can tie it back to was lockdowns, mobility restrictions. All of a sudden, people realized that they couldn't go anywhere they wanted to go. And the world was different. They thought they were in prison. That's quite striking. So this app is about giving people freedom of mobility, freedom of movement. So I think that's kind of important. And then we have other stuff. We have housing and the economy, which is generally speaking government services. So how do we help the government do its job to open up the housing markets and provide job matching and job markets, all very important. And finally, we have communities, sort of local citizen engagement applications. This is just one taxonomy. There are many, but it gives you a sense for how universal this technology is. It pervades all of our lives. And I could go on, but in the interest of time, it's like, so why do we do this? Because it works. In an average city, on proven commercial applications of technologies, you save hundreds of lives, you prevent tens of thousands of crimes, you save 10 to 20, 30 minutes off your daily commute, and you save a ton of water per person and all the rest. It goes on and on. So the measure of effectiveness for all this technology is that it works. And that's why we do it. Now it has consequences. So the reason we're developing all this technology is because of this, but when you look into the abyss, in the words of Nietzsche, the abyss looks back into you. When you use the machine also uses you. And you get used to a certain way of behaving. And we're still very early in this process. As I said, most cities are early. They haven't rolled out the full suite of applications. Across those 60 that we saw, typically mobility is used, these mobility apps and mobility, I mean, we're talking about everything, like on-demand transit, we're talking about smart parking, smart logistics, lockers, et cetera. 60%, highest use case. Then the government is usually in the lead. Government's doing a lot. But after that, it's very much down to the quality of the actor. So if your healthcare people like technology, they will use technology. They don't, they won't. And it's very much up to the hospital system. Same for the police or the fire department. I know a lot of police people who don't like technology for whatever reason. And then of course, utilities all depends on the quality of the utility. So, I think one of the reasons Singapore is an excellent organization and excellent and smart city is that these actors are good. These actors are knowledgeable. These actors know and understand technology. So I was on and they have a technology welcoming attitude. I love to tell this story. I was on a panel with Olaf Scholz, and I forget the name of them, unfortunately, the Singaporean Minister of Smart Cities. And this was about 10 years ago at a smart city thing. And Olaf, the mayor of Hamburg at the time, was being asked, what is your attitude towards digital banking? Can we, how does that work for the older generation in particular? And Olaf, being his social democratic self, went out and said, oh, of course, no, we have to take care of Mutti, grandma, if somebody has to be there, we will have, a special, always keep a human teller somewhere in the bank branch, so not on machines, so Mutti can do her business. And I looked over and the Singaporean minister was looking increasingly uncomfortable. And I said, so, and your view? And he said, that's completely the wrong way of thinking about it. Our philosophy is no grandmother should be left behind. And if I have to hook a teenager to grandma to help her figure out how to use digital banking, I will do so. And by the way, most Singaporean grandmothers are very good at tracking their teenage granddaughters on social media. So I think they can handle it. So I do feel like we're in this process and some cities are going faster than others. So in that context, what's the smartest city? We did a survey of 50 cities. Which one do you think is the smartest city? Any guesses? I like to engage the audience, as you can tell. Okay, I know you're all thinking Singapore. And, fair is fair. You are among the smartest cities. But as I said, there is no smart test. There is only a race, and the race is accelerating. So on this chart, green is good, purple is okay, red is not so good. And so if you were going to, Singapore, he's in the wrong place, that's over there. All right, but if you were to be Asia-centric about this, what you would see is a ring of green, on the Asian cities and the west coast of the US, and then a few others. So somehow the Pacific Ocean is really good for smart technologies. I think that's the takeaway. Now everybody say, well, okay, fine, but money talks, right? I mean, you can't build a smart city unless you have money. And yes, to some extent. So here's the relationship between your smartness, which is your overall benchmarking score. As you can see, the highest is 70. So by Singaporean standards, not quite there yet. But on the horizontal is your wealth. And not surprisingly, there is something of a relationship. But the green dots are Asia Pacific. So yeah, Singapore. But look who punches above their weight. China. So I think that as this gets rolled out, you will start to see environments where, again, think back to what it was that we actually need for all this to happen. We need connectivity. We need agents. We need algorithms. Where do those things come from? Yeah, they come from China. And so there's no question in my mind that we will see the future in Asia and particularly in China. And so the integration of these cities and their rollout of these applications, this is where it's going to happen. I wouldn't bother too much about looking at the other places, frankly. I think this is your focus. And this is going to have an impact. Now, I mentioned before about, that this can augment us, this can change, this can help us all. But yes, it can definitely replace a lot of that activity. So we did the numbers on how much work will be vulnerable to automation by this particular kind of technology. And here it is. The short answer is a lot. So 1.1 billion FTEs, which is like 30% of the global workforce. That could potentially be just technically possible to be automated. And so we're going to have our hands full dealing with the integration of this technology into the world of work. And if you ask where that's going to happen, well, the US, sure, because it's really expensive. And basically, this is where you will see most of the economic cases. But yeah, China too. Where are we? Sorry. In terms of the numbers of people, China and India, because yeah, that's where the people are. And then you have 60 million or so in the US, which is a lot for the US, and especially a lot of value, a lot of money there. So that's kind of what we see coming up, is the social challenge to figure out how to integrate this technology without dislocating the entire workforce and take it one step at a time. But back to cities. So now as we start putting this out there, city planning is one of those areas where we see most clearly the progress of this sentience. And here we have the 5-step evolution of digital twins. So we started off with digital twins as basically very descriptive, visual descriptive copies of what is real time. So lots of 3D models, building information models. I sort of see them outside in some of the areas. So that's great. I mean, that's the first thing. Then we move to more enhanced sensors, operational data, which means you can now have real-time sensor data. So it's not just a static picture, it's something that updates itself all the time. And so it's like basically you have the camera out there and it's feeding data back. And so, oh, that's really good. Then you start taking that and say, well, what if? And we have predictive twins. So now we have the ability to say, okay, I saw a pattern there. And I love some of this technology. It's like people will put cameras all over the city and they'll be able to predict with a reasonable level of certainty when an accident will happen at a given intersection. It's like you have a 1 in 5,000 probability of a near miss. And yeah, all it takes is a number of near misses and that adds up to an accident. So, you know, with enough data, you can basically say where are all the unsafe corners and then, yeah, time to go fix the corner. Change the traffic signal, move the corner around, do something. So that's predictive twin. Then we get panoramic digital twin, complex models based on physical principles and data which simulate. So now we're doing the scenario. It's not just a predictive based on, you know, basically trend line, but it's sort of like what if kind of scenarios. What if it's rainy? What if it's snowing? What if it's hot? What if it's cold? All that stuff. And finally, we get to level 5, where the twin is telling you what to do. It's like, yeah, the planning system has a point of view on your road network and is giving you recommendations and can make autonomous decisions and also has its own algorithms can simulate and visualize. So is this the future? No, it's actually kind of now. So we started off in Hangzhou with the city brain and Ollie doing its thing. And now that's, that was kind of fancy at the time, but you look at it, it looks pretty clunky, but it actually did work. So when we talk about traffic signals, so we have like, this is a curve that they had for travel time and comparing different travel distances and time for pre-timed and adaptive. So this is the pre-timed and this is the adaptive. Adaptive meaning it picked up a lot of data from everywhere, not just the cars, but the cameras on the pedestrians and on the buildings and everything else. So you have all of this information coming in and then they flip the switch, yellow, green, red, whatever. So that meant, and what the answer is? Well, basically saves you, 20%. 20% of your time because the system is smarter than you are. It's smarter than the pre-timed. And so, yeah, it adapts faster. So now Shanghai has, as I said, I think the future is very much linked to this. China is very quick to adopt the quantum city. This is Fuxingdao, the island off Yangpu district. And essentially it's like being set up to be a digital twin managed island in a very predictive way. Now, they're not the only ones, but I just want to say like we should always be thinking about who else is doing interesting things and how can we learn from them. So Shanghai's got one. This is the Hyundai city in Seoul. As you see, it has a lot of flying things around it. And so Hyundai wants to go into the low altitude economy in a very big way. And it would be remiss of me not to mention, of course, the Punggol Digital District. And, I think all of these cities are creating these special areas where we can use the digital twins, the thinking, the planning, the simulation to construct a fundamentally different way of life, introducing all those agents, all that visualization, all that AR into our lives every day. So I call that, most people call that ambient intelligence. So where your environment is smarter than you are. It is not talking down to you, but it's certainly talking with you. And so here we have, typically we sort of have human actions environment. So human environment, pretty boring, right? But there you are. So now we have ambient intelligence system. This thing out there has sensing, picks up information, and has agents, actions, senses, actions, senses, actions. And we have human right here. I think a core question is intelligent interaction with your system. How are you going to do that? How are you going to talk to your AI? How is your AI going to talk to you? And I think we're just getting into it with ChatGPT and Claude and whoever else, but trust me, we're going there. And, we will need to figure that out. And there will be very few places to hide. This is Liu Feng, the inventor of the city brain. I love this phrase. The digital brain will gradually expand from the city brain to the provincial brain, national brain, and finally the world digital brain, 世界数字大脑, or a world digital nervous system. The construction of the world's digital brain will be the third important opportunity to establish the world's technological, ecological standards and systems after TCP/IP and the World Wide Web. I love it. This is a big, think big moment. We're going to transform everything. And wow, what about us? Well, I think the good news about the principle of smart cities and intelligent design is that it is basically all about us. It's giving us individuals the choice in a way which we didn't before. So if I take the role of infrastructure, typically the way we built a city was we told you how it was going to be, and then you suck it and see, you do it. So we told you how your mobility was going to work. We built the highways, get on them. We built the subway, get on that. We told you how the energy was going to work. We told you how the healthcare was going to work. It's all centralized. It's all supply driven. The basic philosophy around all of this is we give you choices. We give you choice of what kind of healthcare, what kind of energy, what kind of mobility. If you don't make the choice, well, that's pretty much on you. But it's giving everybody this opportunity to become a more active citizen, an active resident. And so that has a certain agenda. So what can go wrong, you ask? This seems too good to be true. And of course it is. What can go wrong is, yeah, the citizen isn't active. The citizen fails. Maybe nothing to do with them, but it could happen. So we call that the digital divide. And the digital divide is very real. As you can see, there is a teacher with a blackboard who is expecting their young Black child at home in Los Angeles to be able to learn from her digital lecture during COVID. Clearly that didn't happen. Everybody lost a year of schooling in K through 12 in Los Angeles. Literally everybody. Test scores dropped by 1 year's worth of learning. And for many districts, many parts of Los Angeles, which don't really have Wi-Fi, 5G coverage, more than that. And so a huge disaster. And I think that's the problem. When you introduce something, you expect everybody to get it, but only some people do. This is typically a function of the early stages of adoption. So I think on this one, the moral of the story is the only way out is through. You do not win by going backwards. You have to keep going. And there's a bit of limited but important evidence that says, okay, if this is a predicted urban digital divide, it can be quite high at the early stages of adoption, first, second, third, fourth quintile. But once you get up to the fifth quintile of urban smartness, that comes down quite a lot. So this is one of those things where go fast, go hard, go now, and don't leave any grandmother behind, or any poor Black child in South Central Los Angeles. So this is about so opting out of the system really won't be optional. So I was with our Estonian friends one day, and they were sort of saying, how did you make it work? Become very, very digitalized, very e-government. I could be an Estonian business right now, sitting here. I could sign up online. So how did that do that? And so we just made it mandatory. Everybody has to have the digital ID. It's not optional. And probably Singapore quite similar. And it's sort of like it is requirements. This will not be that you will not be able to opt out of this going forward. You choose how much to use it, but you can opt out. All right, here we go. One more video, but this one is embedded. So let's see. I think it's going to be better, but I think so. The first problem is opting out or failing to cross the digital divide. That's one thing that could go wrong. Here's another thing that could go wrong. This is a 6-minute short video. It is by a guy named Keiichi Matsuda. It was done about 8 years ago. It's called Hyper Reality. So you are Juliana Restrepo. She is a personal shopper who's working on an app, and she's out on the day. She's in a supermarket at the moment, and she's picking up her stuff that the app has told her to pick up to go, on. And let's just watch this for a moment.
¿Qué puedo hacer por usted? ¿Qué está pasando? Sus puntos están bien. No se preocupe, sus puntos están seguros conmigo. ¿Le puedo ayudar en algo más, Emilio?
Yo no soy Emilio, yo soy Juliana Restrepo.
Wrong name.
Por favor, espere.
Escalation.
Me alegra ver. ¿Qué puedo hacer por ti?
Mis puntos están bien. ¿Qué está pasando?
Tranquila, todo está bien. Parece que alguien está intentando vulnerar su cuenta. Por favor, espere. Reinicio tu dispositivo.
Restart. What do you hear?
Hola, Juliana. Me alegra verte. Hoy te ves hermosa. ¿Estás estrenando zapatos?
Ya lo arreglaron. Tengo que seguir trabajando.
Estoy trabajando en eso, pero necesito verificar tu información biométrica. Por favor, sigue la línea azul hasta el centro de servicio más cercano para confirmar tu identidad.
Sí, pero mis puntos están bien.
Todo está bien. Chao.
Okay, do you think everything is fine? What's going on here? What was that? What was the point that Keiichi, who is a designer, was trying to make with this film? It's a bug. These things are not perfect. They do glitch out. When it glitched out, what did you hear? Silence for one thing, and then you heard one sound. Heard a crying baby. So this is about the experience of being in an immersive environment where it is literally blinding you and deafening you to things that are not in line with that environment. So I would call that bias in the machine. The machine is extremely biased here. How is this machine biased? What is this machine trying to get you to do? Buy more stuff. It's trying to get engaged. So this is a warning about dystopic capitalism, basically. And I think that's fine. It's we should all be worried about, but there are plenty of biases that can creep into this. Predictive policing is one of those good examples where, it's like, yeah, I should keep policing the black people, but that's maybe not where the real crimes are happening. So bias in the machine is, if anything, a little more subtle, but it's a bigger problem in the sense that it does warp our behaviors, and I think that is something we need to watch for. So, where do we draw the line? What is the difference between privacy and security? What is the level of autonomy versus control that we want to have? How do we handle the realities of bias and the algorithmic bias that creeps into this? And exactly who is in charge here? So I think that is the second really big challenge here, is that governance on all of this. And to give an example of what we mean to digital rights charters, this comes from Mahindra, which I give them some credit for thinking about this. So I was like, yeah, they're out there building their own smart cities in India. It's like digital rights charters. We should know what data can be collected by whom and for how long in every city, because we like cities. Algorithmic transparency, explainable AI. I think predictable AI would be fine. I'm not sure that everybody really wants to become an AI, expert. Citizen participation, participatory governance, I think, again, based on outcomes. We need to have something like that. And yeah, emergency overrides. She didn't have an override. Juliana could not turn that off. The customer service could turn it off, but not Juliana. So, and I think it's nice to know that, we are starting to see a lot of people kind of wake up to this. So there's education going on, regulatory bodies focused on AI safety. There's a fair bit of security industry coming up here. We are starting to separate out civilian and national security research, which is obviously a problem otherwise. We'd like to see a CERN for AI. I think this is something the scientific community has talked about. I think it'd be a great opportunity for Singapore to play a leading edge role here, and sort of like, what are some of the cutting edge things that we can do? And we should start getting ready for this GI Bill for the AI age, that there's lots of people going to be left behind. So we better figure it out. It's not going to be enough to sort of say, I'll send a teenager for you. I'm going to need help. and metaverse infrastructure. I'm not quite sure. This comes from my friend Alvin Graylin, who's recently wrote a new book called the Next Metaverse, or the Next Universe. Really effective thinker. So I think that's the second big risk, is that we need to manage for bias, and if we can, we should. Which then leads me to the final challenge, is everything everywhere all at once. We are really in it right now. And it's when I showed that video to my son, who does human-computer interaction, his basic response was, that's a really bad interface. That's an interface that will drive you crazy, because it will. That will absolutely drive you crazy. And I think we need to bear in mind the wellness, the health of the individual. We are part of an ocean of data. We're part of an ocean of society, but we're also droplets. And if we lose our cohesion, we lose our capacity to process this information at the human level, we'll have lost something very fundamental. And it will show up. It will show up in our behaviors. It will show up in our isolation, depression, you name it. So yeah, let's watch for that. But the future doesn't have to be bad. And I close with this, one of my favorite clips from any movie. I did say something about Bladerunner. So let's play the clip. Yeah, they're not getting the video. Yeah. Now, anyway, that's the closing scene from Blade Runner, and this is Roy the android, and he is basically saying that all of his memories, these things, amazing, distances, places he's been, they're all going to be lost as he comes to the end of his assigned life, and like tears in rain. It's perhaps the most famous 48 seconds in cinematic history. I encourage you to watch the film if you that's our promise. They won't be lost. They'll always be with us. Everything that we know, we will always know. We'll know more and more, and we can use it. But it's up to us to use it. We have to be that active citizen. And that's why I applaud NUS Cities for bringing us together to understand these things that are happening to us and to give us the capabilities to do that. Because it is our city. And it's the only people who are, no one's coming to save us. We have to save it ourselves. So let's figure out how to use this. So thank you. Those are prepared remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Lola, for your inspiring lecture. I would now like to introduce our moderator of the evening, Prof. Insikian. Okay. Prof. Insikian is a professor of practice at the School of Computing NUS and the director of the translational research at the NUS Institute of Data Science. He holds a PhD from Carnegie Mellon University and previously served as the program director of the Urban Systems Initiative at A*STAR. Professor N's cross-disciplinary research spans bioinformatics, smart cities, text mining, social network analysis, and privacy-preserving data mining, with a focus on uncovering the mechanisms of complex real-world systems through data science. Please join me in welcoming him on stage. We now invite the audience in the auditorium as well as in Zoom to raise their questions.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much, Laura. I can call you Laura, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Lola, right?
There you go.
Yeah, for the amazing talk. But maybe I introduce myself a little bit more. So I come from the computing side. So all the way up from the other side of the campus to here, without the help of AI. So human intelligence, I didn't get lost. So I still have it.
Hang in
Okay,
there.
cool. Yeah. So I think maybe 2000 years, in year 2000, I was doing smart cities. You mentioned about China. So I remember I used to be invited by China to give talk about smart cities experience in Singapore, until one day I find that maybe their cities are getting smarter than ours, and I said, stop, I'm not going to come here. That moment came when I try to pay things on the street with cash, and they don't accept cash anymore. Yeah, so I think, yeah. So that's the moment turning point. So I guess most of us think of smart cities as sensors, apps, and dashboards. But your title is actually the Sentient City. So I was wondering, what do you mean by a sentient city? When does a smart city become a sentient city?
That's a great question, and I think it's a bit of a subjective. I mean, it's a provocative title. Obviously, I wanted to sort of prompt people's thinking. But my general feeling was it can pass a Turing test. You know, it's a person. So if it walks, talks, acts like a duck, it's a duck. And in this case, if you can't tell the difference, then it's sentient. It's down to the perception, which means for a lot of people, it is sentient now. They talk to their chat GPT, they have their boyfriends and girlfriends. So yeah, I mean, I think it's this. So, and when we sort of break it down, it's like, okay, memory, pattern recognition, you know, pixel resolution. These are the attributes along those 18 dimensions. I mean, I think we can all think of people who are, you know, missing one or two things, and yet they still qualify as humans. So at this point, I would actually think about agents, which are the things that we tend to think about as interacting with, as very qualified teammates with maybe some quirks. And so, yeah, but you should treat them as teammates. You should treat them as sentient in that sense, and be aware that they're agents of something that is broader than that, and it's sitting there coordinating their actions. And so you're not talking to that, you're talking to the agent, but you actually are talking to that.
Yeah. So I see what you mean. Okay. Of course, hopefully they remain as agent, not become our masters, right?
I never worry. I mean, I think that's always the Hollywood narrative, and it's like, yeah, Terminator or whatever running around.
Yeah.
As if, I mean, like, I think the worst we have to do there is like an unthinking object. Well, yeah, sure. If you stand in front of a truck without a driver and get run over, I think that's probably on you. But you could say, oh, the truck did it. It's like, well, sure, but did it? Say you were in the way. And an autonomous vehicle, like, you know, just sort of like going down its path, and so like didn't brake in time. Well, you should really look at that programming, I suppose, and say, like, you know, what was the algorithm there? What was the sensor? So, but did it decide to wake up in the morning and Skynet is self-aware and wants to? That I think is a bit of a hologram. Why are we much more worried about the ghost in the machine, the bias, the thing that the programmer designed in to say, you know, I think everybody should go shopping like now, all the time, and points. We need to have points so that people can be rewarded for shopping, and so that that can become the most important thing in their life. It's how many points do they get? That's what you should worry about. And that was a human decided that. And yes, maybe we can like create machines that will design themselves, which is coming. But as I said, at the end of the day, society's kind of about us. You know, if we let that happen, that's on us.
True. But you did mention Bladerunner, right? So let's talk about movies, right? So in a lot of movies, the future of the city is always dystopian, right?
Yeah.
So like Bladerunner, Bladerunner is Los Angeles, I think, or Minorities Report, Washington, D.C. I wonder why is it always American city? But anyway, saturated with biometric surveillance for pervasive advertising. We're still predicting policing, right? Predictive policing. So, but you know, I'm a AI person, right? So I prefer other movies. So I think there are softer depictions like the San Francisco, Tokyo, I think. It's a blend of San Francisco and Tokyo in this, I think, Big Hero.
Big Hero.
So where you have advanced robotics and smart infrastructures, making the city like playful and caring. I'm not just focused on efficiency. Or I think in Black Panther,
Mm.
the Wakanda's golden city, where it's a technologically advanced metropolis with the maglev trains, energy shields, and smart textures, right? In the culturally rich urban environment. I think in a lot of these, we are looking at not just efficiency, but also caring, and also as well as efficiency and culture, right? So of course, I'm the optimist. I prefer the latter. But why is the world usually obsessed with the former one, right?
Bad news
Yeah.
fills a vacuum.
Yeah.
If you're not constantly putting out a message around how helping people ground themselves in reality, they will want to typically discuss how their neighbor is bad about this, or this other problem is happening over here. We like bad news. It's sort of, and I think it's very fundamental. I mean, it goes back to, I think, primitive humans and, sensing of danger.
Mhm.
If you feel danger, that you will respond to that much faster than joy. So it's just overwhelming signaling within our neural cortex to sort of say, that's worrying. Like, oh, so it drowns out the other stuff. So it has to be quite left-brained. I was in order to sort of like help people maintain a grip on reality. Because entertainment is like, the point of these entertainment is to get people to watch, which elevate their heartbeat, stay in their seats. You go for danger. That I think is a short answer. But is that the way the world is? And no, of course not. Nobody actually wants to, experience any of those dystopic realities. If you ask people, how many of you want to live in a Bladerunner universe? Not so many. So no, we don't want that in real life. I think our challenge is to help people differentiate between fantasy and reality. And I think it's challenging. Especially in a post-COVID environment where a lot of us got locked in our rooms for a long time. So that I think is again, focus people on the reality, not the escapist fantasy that we all like to get scared and horror movies are a thing. But the reality that we do have to use this technology in a positive way. And if there is no positive way, well, then we should really seriously reconsider. But obviously the case is against that. There are positive uses for this technology. It does help us live longer. It does help us get to places more conveniently. It does help us become actually more connected. So.
Yeah, so I'm glad you also prefer you're not the Blade Runner person.
My favorite movie is Gattaca.
Okay, Gattaca.
Gattaca is a movie about a star academy where somebody is basically doing unnatural things in order to go to the stars because their heart is weak, and so they have to take the place of someone else. It's all this sort of surveillance gear and sensor gear, and it's a lot of a game of wits to outwit the AI, everything like that. And at the end, the final scene is like, he's finally found out, but the human doctor saves him. He says, because he says, like, you should go to the stars. You made such an effort. You should go to the stars. And I felt there was something there about like, let's use this to augment ourselves, and it's not and to go to the stars.
Okay, so. Cool. Yeah. So on that positive note, maybe I open to the floor. Do you have any questions for Lola?
Hi, I'm Yuki. Just on the topic of biasness, because you mentioned it, right? Biasness can prevent us from seeing complexity and with greater clarity. I think missing is the feeling and the motive part, which is part of the sentient, right? So more than seeing his feelings, how can this narrative breaks the wall of divisiveness? And you talk about Blade Runner, but I think there's a sequel to that, which is 2048, No Way to Return or something like that, right? But it talks about the digital divide.
Yeah.
So as we move towards an inclusive society in Singapore, where we want to be cognizant of the feeling of the people, how do you bring that emotive quality and feeling into our cities in the midst of all this technology?
Yeah, great question. Inclusiveness is, I think, our social challenge for the century, and the ability to keep up with each other and to respect each other as we increasingly explore what it means to be human, which will be very interesting. But this will require that type of, I mean, I think it's a philosophical choice on the part of every society is how much diversity in outcomes are we prepared to tolerate? We don't have much choices in terms of the diversity of where we start. People start where they start. They have the genetic inheritance, they have the economic status. We can try to go to something that's completely equal, but I don't think that's going to happen. But we do have some choices about how much disparity do we tolerate and on which dimensions. You know, like in Gattaca, the guy has to grow 2 inches. So in order to meet a target, I say, well, that could be a standard. And I'm very mindful. I think of this city state as being a great example of knowing which things you have to make some very personal interventions on if you want to have a city. And if we measure the results of a city by the collective outcomes, and we don't say that it's about, you know, the individual success, but it's more about the success of our society. And I think you have a case for that. You have a case for saying, okay, well, there are some minimum standards of hygiene, of behavior, whatever you want to call it, language. And that's what the mindset is here. We need a debate. So my answer is we need a debate about that. We need to have a conversation about what type of inequality outcomes, not inputs, but outcomes are we prepared to tolerate here? Are we okay with people who simply can't function in modern society because they don't know how to use this? And you know, they can't get a grab, so they have to stay at home. Is that acceptable? And if it's not acceptable, how do we fix it? And I think we should be very specific. We should go through those verticals, you know, crime, safety, health, resources, and say, can everybody use these things? Why or why not? And I think it's open to problem solving, and it's a habit and a mindset that says, yes, we do need to sort of have that debate. I'm perfectly fine if people say, well, actually, I'm okay with, you know, some people not being able to participate in this way, or so, well, that's a choice. And societies make those choices all the time. I'm an urbanist. I generally think that the consequences of people's decisions have consequences. And then they are successful or unsuccessful based on their experience of those consequences. So we do get the societies we decide to have. And usually at this point, increasingly quickly. So I hope we don't become all selfish and sort of divisive and all the rest. I don't believe we will. I think we're all intelligent enough to know when we're doing something which will fundamentally rip us apart. And I think the US is a live experience in this at the moment. But yeah, you know, that we do things and we hopefully learn from them. So it's a long answer, but it's a really important question that has to be answered for every society.
Dr. Lola, thank you very much for this masterclass in Sentient City. I really enjoyed the lecture. I just want to get your thoughts on what's the state of interconnectivity between the developments in smart city and smart homes. It seems to be on dual track in terms of government and public sector pushing forward smart city, and then the private sector has a lot of like smart home solutions. Do they interconnect at some point, or is there like technology standards that is emerging so that everybody can develop solutions on a singular platform, or it's going to be bifurcated? Just want to get your thoughts on these questions.
Well, I think on the technical infrastructure and interconnect, I'm going to defer to my colleague here, more of a technical background than I do. But I mean, yeah, middleware is a thing. So the interconnect between the piece of customer-facing equipment or CPE and the network device or the network itself. Yeah, that's a business. So E2 is a Chinese middleware company that's quite good at this kind of thing, and Cisco made a whole business out of it, and so a bunch of others. So I think that, you know, that the translation of the home into the network, you know, there's a technical solution for it. There's also an economic dimension for this. So if your decision to buy a solar panel often depends on your ability to have sell excess power back to the grid. So if you do not have a tariff or you do not have a regulatory grid that allows you to do that, you may not buy a solar panel. In which case, you know, both your energy costs will be different and your carbon footprint. So there is an economic question. It's like, what kind of things do we choose to incentivize through the tariff mechanism in that case? Typically, networks are funded through tariffs. I personally believe digital infrastructure is a network. It should be funded through a tariff, and we should have a maximum cap on, we should have rate of return legislation on internet providers, which is clearly not the case at the moment. I think Amazon should have that. So, that's another kind of dimension of this. And I'm sure there are other ways of thinking about this connectivity. But again, it comes back to the question just now about, how much, differences are we prepared to tolerate? And to what extent does the difference that we have in one place affect the inequality in some place else? I think those are implications of that. But to take it back to sort of practical stuff, smart homes are going great. And I think that for a long time, we sort of were in this era of customizing installations into places. And now we finally get past that into sort of like at scale modular design for, energy management within buildings. Because have you ever talked to, do energy management? No, it's like a historic industry in many ways. These systems have been, encrusted with age and legacy for decades. And I really feel like today we're starting to get to the point where we can replace these energy systems, wholesale. And that is a great opportunity. So yeah, because the benefits of doing so are so significant. We can reduce energy consumption by 30, 40, 50% when we put in the new sensors. And so that's enough to make you want to do that. And as a result, so we'll have real economic cases for these smart homes at scale in multifamily buildings, and I'm sure there are many people here more expert than me in this. So. And is that getting at your question? Because I'm not sure it does. Cities manage infrastructure. The home is your personal space. You get to choose, and we can incentivize the home to behave in a certain way. Throw out your trash this way, pay as you throw. Don't consume so much. Give you money back if you don't. Those are all within the scope of what the city can do, and I think it will, and it does. And I think it's just a question of like, how big a problem is it? It's water or waste or whatever.
So maybe let's answer some questions from the online community. So there's one question here that's quite interesting. So you mentioned all this AI will be for good, right? We want to make it for good. So one example that you gave was AI for healthcare. So, so that all of us will live longer and longer and longer. So what if, it allows the human longevity to become like 120 years old as a norm, right? So what would that implication on cities?
Well, as I recall, my president and the Russian president had a discussion about this the other day. They sort of concluded that 150 was a reasonable time.
Oh,
so who knows?
Yeah.
But I think 120 is very much within the planning process, planning life cycle. Everybody thinks 120 is doable, and after that, it's actually brain issues that get in your way. Yeah, the implication, of course, is like, we have an aging society. And so, we will need to think about incorporating, how the implications of that affect all of those dimensions, health and resources and housing and so forth. So, I mean, I think it's a, classic cities problem like any others. And I do think we can adopt it. Be curious about kind of the unintended side effects of all of this. Children will become incredibly valuable. The right to have a child. It's like not everybody should be a parent. So I think the value of children and the value of their upbringing will be something that's very socially supported. So this will be interesting in terms of like creating childcare funds, and I hope that we'll also still have elderly funds. And so that, but yeah, I mean, I imagine that public policy is already shifting in that direction. You sort of see expenditures in European countries, sort of the willingness to spend on supporting the having of children. Obviously, we have other labor-related issues, migration and so forth. So I thought that's where my mind goes. But we know that a healthy city is a multi-generational city. It's a city where you see old and young in the same place outdoors, and they're talking to each other, and they all feel safe. That's a healthy city. So. I hope that, in an aging society, we'll be that much more conscious of the need for safety in a public way. Permeability. be a very important concept, sort of like keeping the flow going between the inside and the outside of a building, of an area. Those are some thoughts. Yeah.
So maybe I can be a little bit more provocative.
Please.
So I imagine the city as a finite space, right?
Hmm.
So if you allow more and more people, or the elderlies, you know, there will be more elderlies. Does that mean, you kind of alluded to
Yeah.
that? That might be lesser, you know, space for the younger generation, right? So yeah, wouldn't that be a
No.
problem?
Yeah, I love your provocation, but no, short answer, no. First of all, that's not how I define a city. A city is a place where you have high density, high frequency interactions. That's all it is. It's like we have high density of high frequency interactions. So people interacting a lot with each other in a relatively dense way. Bear in mind, urban areas take up approximately 1.5% of the land area across the planet. We have a lot of land out there. We could do a lot of things in a lot of places. So, but the characteristic of a city is this density and frequency of interaction, because that is what enables all of the effects of the city. And so I'm a big believer in Jeffrey West. It's sort of in the theory category. It's that scaling. Really recommend the book. And so, you know, we have basically three kinds of relationships as you add people. We have linear, we have sublinear, and we have superlinear. Linear is stuff that grows with the person, your per capita housing typically. Sublinear is typically infrastructure because we're basically sharing it. And as a result, we get bottlenecks and congestion. Superlinear is social effects. Anything that has to do with social, with our interactions, because it's just that you go from 1 to 2 to 10 to 100. Your number of possible interactions does not go from 1 to 2 to 10 to 100. It goes from 1 to 5 to 50,000 to 2 million. So the social nature of our society is going to explode on us. And that's what the digital is. The digital is us taking all that desire for interaction and taking it into a place where you can actually accomplish it, which is all. So I think the short answer to your question is that we're not going to crowd anything out. We're going to actually move it digitally, if nothing else. And yeah, we'll continue to grow. And I think great cities will grow. So we were just having a little conversation about regional planning for Singapore. It's like great cities will grow because people want to be part of that. This is who we are. You put a camera in outer space and you observe the planet for thousands of years, you see nothing. And all of a sudden, billions and trillions of years, you see nothing. And then all of a sudden the lights would come on. And that's the cities. So that's the vision.
So that's enough land for us to grow.
Oh, we don't have to worry about that part.
Good, okay.
Yeah.
Any questions? Yeah.
Thank you very much. How different does a future planned or new city look from a current or existing, you know, world city that's become sentient?
Well, I think sentience and the technology is it can be applied, it can go anywhere. So I don't think the technology is particularly differentiated. I think it's actually a very global discussion around standards and connectivity. It's not like Huawei doesn't go everywhere, or Cisco, or same bunch of people, whether you go to Riyadh or Beijing or Washington, D.C., with maybe a little bit of geopolitics thrown in there. But it's basically the same bunch of people. Every tech startup that I know of in China has people who used to work for Cisco. I'm not kidding, somewhere. And so there's this, so I think the technology is quite global in nature. It's not particularly local. Now the new city versus an existing city, of course, is fundamentally different because new cities are products of your imagination. And the reality is that your imagination is a pretty poor thing relative to the accumulation of the experiences of millions of people over the history of an existing city. So an existing city has had, tens, hundreds, usually thousands of years, because cities are the longest lived objects on this planet, to become itself. Rome wasn't built in a day. It wasn't built in a century either. It's been built in a couple of millennia. And that's fabric, which is impossible to replace. It will never be another Rome. Nothing like Rome. It'll be itself. But you wouldn't want to be Rome. Paris wouldn't want to be Rome. Paris wants to be Paris. Beijing wants to be Beijing. Singapore wants to be Singapore. So the fabric itself, that is unique and indistinguishable. It's unique in and of itself. Now, a new city looks the same wherever you are. So I've been in China for the last 40 years. And everybody knocks Chinese cities because they all look like each other. And I said, like, why is that? Well, because they do, because they were built by the same people at the same time, using the same materials, and they read the same books. They went to the same schools. They did it all at the same time. Like, why would you think it would look different? So, I mean, this is the, you know, housing industrial complex on steroids. It's like, yeah, just chunk it out. And why did they do that? Well, because people wanted to go to the city and we didn't really have time to invent an entire folklore for them. So it was like, we hope that they will come back to it. So every city will try out its local cuisine, or sort of like have a festival saying, yeah, the peasants looked like this back in the day. It's like, oh, okay, fine. But, you know, your square looks like your square and look like everybody else's square. So that's a battle. And it's like, and Jane Jacobs is the high priestess of all of this. And sort of when she sort of like says, you know, we need to have old buildings to have innovation. It's like, you need cheap buildings, Jane. You can have innovation in new buildings. It's quite possible. But yeah, you know, this idea that, you know, we need to have somehow kind of the patina of age in order to have real cities. I don't buy it, because I think the purpose of the city is to enable the density and frequency of those interactions. So if, you know, and so one of my favorite books about this is Factory Girls, which is a Wall Street Journal reporter's discussion of life in Dongguan, a city where you want to reinvent yourself. And because Dongguan was reinventing itself, Dongguan in Pearl River Delta used to be known as the mattress capital of the world. That's what they made, a lot of mattresses. And they were fairly good at using those mattresses too, if you know what I mean. So we had that mattress capital. And then after a while, the cost went up and you couldn't really do mattresses anymore. So they became the TV capital of the world. And Thomson Schneider used to have the biggest factories for TVs anywhere else in the world. Massive, like, big boxes. And of course, if you know anything about electronics assembly, you say, well, that'll last you for so long. And then all of a sudden your costs go up. And then those guys go to Guangxi or somewhere. And so what do you replace it with? Well, apparently biochem. So now there are biological products, you know, sort of enterprises everywhere. So cities reinvent. People come to the cities to reinvent. The average age of migrants in China is 19. And did you know what you were doing when you were 19? No, of course, you're all special and very talented people from Singapore. So no doubt you have very clear ideas. I had no idea what I was doing when I was 19. But all these migrants are 19. So why are they going? Because they know what they don't want. And that was to stay home. They had no desire to go work in the fields or the factory or with their family or marry the person or whatever it was. So they just know what they don't want. So they have to go to somewhere, and that's why they migrate. So I think that is not something that we should block, and that's something we should celebrate, and we should recognize they're going to a place that is faceless, that has no redeeming architectural value whatsoever, but does create an opportunity. And that's what we should be celebrating. We should celebrate the city's role in the opportunity. And so they will all look the same, but every individual person's story is their story, and that's what we should focus on. We should not look, the buildings, cities are not buildings. Cities are people. And if we pay attention to the stories of the people, we'll find it every bit as rich and exciting and as interesting as, you know, the beautiful panoramas of Montmartre or whatever, which are simply the accumulated history of all those stories reified in front of all of us. So that's a somewhat long-winded poetic answer, but I like helping people sort of see past the physical structures and to see what's actually motivating them, which is people and their stories.
So Lola, at 19, most of the Singapore males are going to the army.
Indeed.
In the army.
You're being socialized.
Yeah, exactly. but that's our Singapore story. I think something to
Absolutely.
share.
No, I know
Yeah.
plenty of my son's classmates.
Yes, yes,
Sorry.
Celebrate. But in most of you now have to manage the effect of harmful interactions. If you have clusters of groups of people who are out to harm the rest of that community, you have to look at barriers and ways of opting out of systems. So I don't think we're facing a reality. We don't factor into the fact that there are harmful sectors, there are harmful interactions. We have mob violence, we have people who are paid to riot and so on. So there are, how do you factor into the fact that in our collective history, as Chinese immigrants in Singapore. We've had clan associations. We've had other groups that have helped us to find an identity within a larger whole. So is there not a place where we can opt out of a system? You mentioned several times in your talk, there's no place to hide. And that's scary. Because in some places, to hide is to be safe. Whereas some groups have to be safe from other groups. Singapore has gone through several series of communal riots, where we've got certain communities have to be protected from other community sectors of the same community. So this whole globalized interactive thing is good as in terms of function, but how do we protect in real life a multi-racial, multi-religious community such as Singapore?
Wonderful question. Let me start by a saying that my father used to share with me, and about how one should conduct oneself, as to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. And we should always seek to do good. We should be cognizant of the serpents. And I think that as responsible citizens, when I mean that in a very holistic sense, as in like we belong to a place, we're a citizen of it. Forget the documentation part. We have a responsibility, I think, to be active in society. I think we are part of a society. Now, if we want to leave the society, up to us. We can go. We can reduce our frequency and density of interactions. We can move away. That's no problem. But as long as we're in this environment, this ambience, I think we have a responsibility to be active. But to your point, we also have a collective responsibility to manage our commons, to manage our public space, to manage our network. And it is all a network. And if you see a virus invading a network, you should do something about it. So this is where the management of the network function has a relationship to the freedom of the individual to make choices. And that's a tension in every society. And I think we should recognize what are the things that will break the system. Some things are worse than others. In legal doctrines, shouting fire in a crowded theater, that would be a thing that you basically say, no, that's illegal, you can't do that. So every society has those kinds of lines, and everyone needs to be aware of them. And we have a collective responsibility to follow those kinds of rules. And it's really up to us. So I think we have more capacity now to improve the quality of our collective social behavior than we ever have before. And people are not going to wait for that. So I have a story I like to share. I was at a cocktail party a decade ago, and I overheard some guy from Solidaire, the French Lebanese construction company, talking about a latest contract that he had just won from the Saudi government to design a public space, a public square. And people looked at him and said, what do you mean design a public square? In Saudi, there's no design. It's a square. That's it. There's nothing on it. It's like, just a square. And they said, no, you don't understand. The client basically said, things are changing. Society's a bit different now. We need to have a little bit more, design of these areas that is more reflective of the changes in society. So like, okay, fine. Could you please explain what you mean? What is the code that you are trying to introduce here? And he says, well, there are different kinds of people in public now than there used to be in public before. And they might be interacting with each other in a different way. So, we might have to manage that. I said, oh, you mean women? Women in public, they'll be out there with men. It's like, yeah, that's kind of a thing, And like, if you have a big public square and you have a lot of men and you have a lot of women, and some of them are actually like near each other, and maybe who knows, they're young people, who knows, they might be holding hands or something. Somebody might get upset. Might be a problem. We might have like an incident, and we don't like that. So could you design a square where that risk of that happening would be mitigated? So how we do that? Well, maybe have a bench. Maybe have like trees or something. Maybe have like little nooks and arbors and semi-permeable spaces. It's like, maybe the built environment can actually enable the diversity and interactions that this society is moving towards. I thought, wow, that's cool. That is a very good use of public design. And I see that. And I think that is, so good architecture, my point of view, as a non-architect, good planning as a sort of a planner, is responsive to society. And it's always a dialectic. It's like we plan, society does something. We go back and replan, society does something. And we keep doing it. We don't let it sit there. And I think that's the, the sort of lesson about, plans are not written in stone. Neither is stone. Stone is not written in stone. We should be able to change it. We should, we're mindful of the patterns that we think hold our city together. The things that we hold true and dear, but also recognize that things will change. And so sometimes, those incidents, those things where things that people are uncomfortable, one has to, I think, look at them very carefully and say, what exactly is going on here? Is this a generational clash? Is this a cultural clash? Is this criminality? Different responses.
On the topic, I think Yuki again. I think some of the most wonderful cities are cities of immigrants through the centuries, right? New York, Los Angeles. And they are not by planning, it's by evolution, circumstances. So how do you as a planner try to negotiate the differences, especially in the common spaces where the population lives in, okay? In Singapore, we try to separate it in the past, the British conquer and divide. Even today, when we have our helpers, there are different areas that they congregate. So my question is, in the city of immigrants, which we are, past or present or future, how do you negotiate the differences, especially in public spaces for these people?
Yeah, this is where the planning and architectural process needs to intersect with the community engagement and the political process of developing a city, if I understand the question. That it's, immigrants bring with them a set of experiences which is greater than themselves. It comes from another, it's the mixing of places. It's happening in real time. So, and I agree with you. I celebrate immigration. I think that immigration is the driving factor of social growth in many ways. And if I look at the immigrant populations, we know this, I've done this research. They are by and large, there's always a mix in terms of like who's working and who's not working. But the key is not actually selecting immigrants, it's integrating them. So if you have an immigrant in a city, the number one thing you have to ask yourself is, does this person have a job? And if this person doesn't have a job, then the question is why? If they don't speak the language, then you better teach them. So these are the things that set it apart, not whether they had a PhD when they came home. I know many, sort of medical doctors driving taxis. And it's a step down, but they actually would say, well, there's a reason we're here. And we keep, and they contribute. And over time, the numbers will tell you that, societies with high levels of immigration do progress faster, and they are able to grow economically. They may have, issues related to integration, but the ones that can successfully integrate grow even faster. So that's my research is to say that. So on balance is a good thing, but how to do it? And I think this question of like, how does one integrate a person from another place? Singapore, in many ways, is best practice. I mean, I think that the story of this city has been one of integrating people from different places. And I think one should recognize that is a strength, and we should treat people as things, as places, and people as assets to be invested in, not as costs to be minimized. And that means we have to find what it's going to take for them to become productive. And again, is it language? Is it healthcare? Is it society? It varies. I'm not sure I'm giving you a great answer here, but I do not see these in contradiction. I think immigration is the source of our greatest human city stories. And I think, we do well to cherish those memories and to build on them by combining them with others. So I celebrate Los Angeles, as you know. These days, the biggest immigrant group is the Bangladeshis. We have little Bangla impinging on Koreatown, rubbing up against the Orthodox. And it is quite a vibrant mix, I can say, when you start to see the fights between the landlords on the corners, and it's like, and everybody has a different point of view on what, when the fresh fruit stands should be open or not, and who's going to pick up the trash. Nothing that can't be worked out through a little bit of a robust exchange of views. Yeah.
So maybe I share a little bit from the AI point of view. So when we train AI model, the best data that we have are the diverse data. If the data are too similar or the distribution too uniform, that leads to model collapse. So I think it's similar to the city. So I think planning and all this is an iterative process. So you plan, but I think the people will plan. So I think one example is in HDB, you plan the path, but people will walk on the grass and form another path. And I think the wisdom of our HDB is that you pace the path that people walk. I think that's kind of maybe an idea of that, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, I think there's one guy behind has wanted to ask. I think we go for that one first. And then after that. And that was the last question.
Thanks, Dr. Lola, for the good presentation. My question is more a social question. I'm a father of 2 teenage children. AI provides convenience and provides us lots of ability not think or not activate our frontal cognitive behaviors. My children are getting, I would say, lazier and lazier, as convenience, asking them to do chores is like they'd ask the robot to sweep my floors themselves. Sometimes I think, I guess my question is resistance to AI and the human nature of hard work or the social drivenness of doing something, active, and is displacement of convenience in sake of convenience and our human nature of being hardworking and is there, how do we draw the balance there, between efficacy or efficiency and creating a society of younger generation that's getting in the context of convenience get lazier, and if I were to say not as smart, because I trust Google to bring me here. I didn't activate my brain to remember the turning to left or right. So where do we draw the balance? And maybe I add a follow-up question: would there be a human intrinsic rebellion to convenience and the matter of things like that?
Yeah, as a parent, I understand where you're coming from. So mine are 22 and 23 now, so made it through those years. But I think that, as I said, a city is a place where you have high density, high frequency interactions. And if one is not able to sustain that, then one is in trouble. If one is not able to interact frequently with a lot of people within a city, you're going to have a problem. You will not have the same level of opportunities as anybody else in your cohort or your peer group will be, and you'll find yourself overwhelmed, and you'll probably have at some point some kind of withdrawal. So I think our central challenge is people who are tasked, who are given the awesome responsibility to bring young people into the world, is to enable them to do that. Enable them to sustain that level of interaction and frequency. But we should be mindful that the nature of their interactions with their peers and with others will be different than ours, because they live in a different world. And so we should help them accommodate themselves to that and know what's good and know what's healthy and know what's unhealthy. So my son was a gamer. And so, he would teach me these Russian words. And I would say them to other Ukrainians. And I said, no, please don't say that. That's a very bad idea. Words. And I went back to my son and said, why are you saying these things? And he said, yeah, no, those guys, yeah, I know those guys are pretty toxic. I understand, but it was like we treat them specially because they're good gamers, but we don't interact. So he, at a very young age, was able to tell good from bad and healthy from unhealthy. And so I think kids are generally all right, but you do have to keep an eye on them. and make sure that they are building that capacity to interact. And I think that's part of our role as city planners, as city engagers, is to say, no, it's, you shouldn't ignore reality. The reality is these avatars are out there. These chatbots are out there. And if you think that your kid is just alone by themselves in a room talking to their computer, you'd be wrong about that. So no, keep in touch. Very important.
Last question.
Dr. Woetzel, thank you very much for a very interesting lecture. I was in China recently for a very short trip, and I visited the 3 cities you mentioned, Beijing, Shanghai, and Sentient. But I was there only for 4 days. Enough to impress me about the rate of innovation, smartness, so much more, a lot, very high level automation, sensorization, and so on. Clearly, the trend towards the sentient nation is there. So I was there only for 4 days, but you've been there for 40 years. So you observe all this going on for 40 years. So my question is somewhat related to the last one, previous one, in the sense that as we see more and more of this technology become more pervasive, do you see an impact on, in China at least, since it's growing at such a rapid pace, on the ability of people to interact socially? Yes, you mentioned a high level of interaction, high frequency, but that is through social media, through machine. But the level of face-to-face interaction, despite the population, probably has gone down because everybody's talking to the machine and not face-to-face. So the question is, as an urban designer, is there anything we do to intervene in the way we design our cities so that we are able to at least maintain the soul of the city, or in Singapore, we call it the kampong spirit, so it doesn't deteriorate with time as we get more comfortable interacting with machines rather than people to people, and the technology may not be as humanized as we want it to be. So at least in terms of city planning, urban planning, what is it we need to do from an intervention point of view to make sure that we maintain this ability of humans to interact the soul of the city?
It's a wonderful way to end the Q&A, because I think the soul of the city is what we're after here. How do we preserve it and enhance it? Cities are hard to kill, but you can do it. If you work at it hard enough, you can do it. And it's usually a function of something that affects the whole city climate. So invasions. So it's not about quiet deaths in one's bedroom. It's about something that just spreads and sort of infects the entirety of the body politic. And I think if we see that coming, we have to step in. We have to sort of say, this is a virus that needs to be stopped. And I think if we see that happening in our society, hooliganism, some people will call it, or we should do something. And generally speaking, most cities do respond to that. So this, though, the technological shifts that we have brought into being here, I think the jury is still out on to what extent are they helping or hurting us to increase the quality of our interactions. I mean, for many things, we have never had more interactions in the history of mankind, like concerts. We've never had so much attention being paid to cultural phenomenon, whatever you want to call it. We've never had such a rapid pace of innovation, which fundamentally depends on proximity effects and sort of people getting together. So yes, I think there are sort of moments of enemy where we sort of lose the plot and people may drop out. But to your point, I like it. It was like, what practically can we do? Well, at the least, we should remove the barriers. So if somebody is worried about coming into public and dealing with someone else because of their physical safety, well, that's something that we can do something about. We can make sure that that is no longer a concern. And if they're not able to access the space because of mobility or whatever, then again, something we can do something about. And if they're not going out because they don't know about it, well, that's actually something we can do digitally. We can sort of help people find common ground. And I generally feel like there's so much, desire for us to socialize that most of what we have to do is get out of our own way and sort of remove the barriers to our interactions. And there are many, from the cost of transport to the time the shops are open. And many times these are due to sort of outdated notions of public health and safety, or just habit. And it's like, no, we can innovate. We can get rid of those codes, and we can help entrepreneurs, and life of the city can be that much more robust. So as good urban designers, we understand how to do that. I think technology is a tool to be used. And if we choose not to use it, well, then that's back to us. And as far as like, when do you find breakdowns? Usually you find it when somebody loses something, like their job, or their family. That's when we lose it. So we should pay special attention to those groups which are being left behind, which are being disadvantaged, which have no longer got the same set of opportunities, mostly because they couldn't keep up. But okay, that's where the problem is going to be. And if we intervene proactively, and recognize that change is essential to the growth of the city. That if a city is a living thing, it cannot be put in stone. It cannot be encased in aspic. It's not a museum. And so we have to tolerate a certain amount of disruption, or we cease to exist as our city. So the wise city is what I like to see. How can we become more wise? And I think we can definitely use technology to do that.
With that, that's a great conclusion, because I finally find out why you call it a sentient city. Because the city is a living thing, right?
Yeah.
And I think technology can maybe make it more alive, right? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lola, for your valuable time and for the lecture. We would also like to thank Prof. Ng for his moderation. And thank you everyone for your participation. Now we are come to our last special part. We are pleased to announce the winners of the Liveable Cities Best Project Competition for the academic year 2024 to 2025, semester 1. Liveable Cities is a core curriculum course organized by NUS Cities for all undergraduate NUS College of Design and Engineering students, introducing them to what makes a city livable through case studies of Singapore's own journey to livability in areas such as housing, environment, and economy. Each semester, the students' projects are brought through a selection process. Among all, 2 winning teams will be selected based on how far they are built on evidence-based and systems thinking, support livability, and show some originality. These teams are each awarded with $250 cash prize from DP Architects and ULI student memberships for each student. We are grateful for the generous sponsorship of DP Architects and Urban Land Institute. So the first winning project is the titled Active, Beautiful, Clean, Dynamic, Engaging ABCDE Water Program. This program aims to improve access to natural elements in Sanghi Api and the quality of the waterway for the community living around it. The team proposed reconstructing green buffer, revamping boardwalks, extending mangroves into a Park Series Park, and creation of kayaking and outdoor classroom areas to strengthen the links between nature and the community in the site. The team's project stood out among other Sanghi Api teams in specifically laying out a participatory design process that will ensure that their proposed redesign of the area is linked to residents' aspiration. And the second winning project is titled Singapore River Cleanup. The team found that poor water quality at Clarke Quay reduced the public interaction and engagement, when its water bodies limiting opportunities for recreation and community activities. To address this, the team proposed to implement floating wetlands and new water filtration system. And alongside creating opportunities for kayaking and introducing improved heritage trails and art installations to build engagement, the team distinguished itself by clear and comprehensive site observation and study, including case studies. They demonstrated the depth of purposefulness of each solution and integrated both technical knowledge and social framework in their proposal. Without further ado, let me invite Professor Yong-Soo Hai, Director of NUS Cities, to come forward to present the certificates to the deserving teams. From the project Active, Beautiful, Clean, Dynamic, Engaging Water Program, we have Jerry Loy from Chemical Engineering. Next. Jordan Tan from Computer Engineering. Clara Chu from Landscape Architecture. Yun Yu Hun from Mechanical Engineering and Lin Wenkang from Industrial Design. Yun Yu Hun is unable to present tonight, so their certificate will be presented to them on a separate occasion. Yes, and take a photo together. Let's give them a round of applause. Next up, from the project Singapore River Cleanup, we have Yun Jing Wang from Electrical Engineering. Kong Eaton from Environmental Engineering. Rivasi Balaji Samika from Computer Engineering. And Ethan Shun and Andy Tong, both from Biomedical Engineering, and Huang Ziyi from Architecture. Ethan Shun is unable to present tonight, so the circle. Okay. Three, two, one. Let's give them a round of applause. Okay, take again. Yeah, sure thing. Thank you, Lao. Thank you, Prof. Yu. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your participation for tonight's event. Please also watch out for our social media channels as well as your emails, where we will be informing you about our future lecture. Thank you and good night.